All right. Minimize this window, folks. There will be nothing to see here but my ugly mug and the monolith. Don't ask. So, yeah, nothing's going to happen in terms of polarity. Go do the dishes or something while my unfortunate voice passes the next 40 minutes. Put on some soothing music. Pretend I'm a guru. I'd do it myself, but my idea of soothing might not be comparable to yours. How do you feel about acute sensations of death? As what I mean. Anyway, I've been trying to gather some thoughts that are worth expressing in this ocean of bottled messages on which our vessel is bobbing. What I normally do on this channel is respond irreverently to what I see as agents of unchecked authority, in an attempt to speak at least the seed of truth to the seed of power, for reasons that should be undefined but obvious. But of late I've had to ask myself, you know that thing I talk about a lot, or indeed that loosely defined cluster of things I talk about a lot, is it as important? Is it as urgent as the thing that's happening right now? Or indeed the loose cluster of things happening right now? Right now it's May 2020 for anyone watching this in the future. And, well, no. Probably not, no. For those not in the know, I usually advocate for those I consider under-advocated for. But is this 2020 situation something that penetrates even deeper into the heart of the human predicament than even the identity politics situation possibly could? Perhaps. Very perhaps. If importance is uncertainty multiplied by scale, I should probably go so far as to say yes. The alternative, I guess, would be to present the argument, I know exactly what to expect from this situation. I've lived through the exact same thing before. No, you haven't. What's happening now could not have happened 30 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. We're taking a space-age society, more specifically an information-age society, where information can be promulgated across the globe at the speed of light, and we're taking that and seeing what happens if you add a sprinkling of pandemic and a goodly 100 fluid ounces of nanny state, which is beyond nanny state. To be fair, it's orphanage state, incubation unit state. No human being alive can tell us what this is going to be like. We are through the looking glass, way past the rabbit hole and deep into the bowels of the Viking underworld, ladies and gentlemen. So do let us hold hands and do our best to trust each other as we descend into this unique and unbuttressed cave system. All we have is each other, for better or worse. It sounds like an all too familiarly whispered sweet nothing, I know. But as I once said somewhere, the only faith I've ever had is my faith in humanity. I call it faith because I have no proof that humanity will survive for any significant future, nor any proof that it will not. The past is no control model for the future, certainly not at this point. So I choose to believe that humanity, even at this volatile stage of its development, has the potential for long-term survival and maybe even interstellar colonization. Don't ask me, it was the mushrooms idea. I have no rational reason to believe any of this, but I choose to. I am but an animal. I am not perfectly rational. I have holes that cannot be filled by mere knowledge. If a faith-shaped hole exists in your psyche, you ought to fill it with something. And it had better be something that exists and has a track record. So I fill it with my flimsy, semi-materialistic, semi-spiritual faith in this time worm of DNA I call humanity. Once upon a time, the total human population on Earth was reduced to about 30,000. Just 30,000 prehistoric humans, no more educated than a modern kindergarten dunce. And they lived through a major extinction event. The fifth such extinction event in the history of our broad ancestry on the aforementioned Earth. We've been carefully refined by cosmic nature, just like every other species still alive. When the chips are down, the human tribe is as hardy as any other species. More so, given our ability to manipulate the environment. Yes, a little bit like a virus. Thank you, Agent Smith. You're so unique and special. I hope she sees this. I hope he picks you. Ooh la la, someone's going to get laid in college. Got it out your system? You're the virus too. Still not killing yourself? Then stop pretending you've discovered the enemy and it's everyone who looks like you but not you. I don't even need Kant for this. You are an idiot. Come back when you realise why painting your bedroom black was a bad idea. Whatever could be said about the virality or virility of wild humans, the same could not be said of modern humans. Pick 30,000 of us at random and throw us into a prehistoric ice age, we would not take over the environment like a virus, eventually or otherwise. We would die like fish in a barrel of frozen fish. Even though we have the same hardware as prehistoric humans, the hardware to be hardy, it's a skill that eludes us if it's not exercised. And though in most cases it isn't, in some cases it is. So even though there may very well be 7 billion over-domesticated farm humans gumming up the planet who are no more likely to survive an extinction event than the billions of de-skulled mutant chickens we have lining plague-ridden basements all over the world, I am nevertheless confident that at the end of it all, the last remaining humans will at least give the rats and the cockroaches a run for their money. Sorry, this was supposed to be optimistic. I'll regroup. As many people have noticed, well, as some of you may have noticed, the natural environment seems to improve when human beings are in lockdown. Less trash, less pollution, less chaos in general. The animals are coming back, they're having a good time and all this. The ecosystem thrives so much better when there aren't 7 billion humans running amok all over it. But that's the point. There is a detail in there that is the point, at least as far as I can see. It's that figure of 7 billion there and rising. What you're seeing happening in nature as a result of the lockdown is something that happened all the time, all over the place, when there were less than 1 billion of us. Until the Industrial Revolution, humans were not really capable of affecting the ecosystem that much. The Romans almost got there with their aqueducts and whatnot, but the cycle of empires demands sacrifices, so we had a soft reset. I wonder when the next one will be. The thing is, cities and city lives are glimpses into the future of an overpopulated world. Living in cities can give you the impression that there are too many people, especially living in a city and working a delivery job. Feel free to use that as an ad hominem against me, should you feel the need, but it's still part of the point. Living in cities, living in densely populated areas, will likely give you the impression that, well, it will lower the value of human life, in your estimation and most other people's estimations, within the densely populated region. And this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Humans are less valuable if everyone around you agrees to their low values. The more human lives there are, the less valuable they're likely to be. The more of anything there is, the less valuable it is. That is how everything works, economically speaking. Anyway, it's about as much as I understand about economies. But yeah, 7 billion people and rising. That's roughly an octupling of the global population in the span of about 2 centuries, and rising. Many of those people live in cities, surrounded by and packed like sardines in a crushed tin box, with way more souls within earshot that can ordinarily be catered for in our Stone Age Dunbar tribe of 150 close acquaintances. So it's no surprise that many, many people are going to develop a rather misanthropic approach to life. This isn't inherently bad. It can be abused, but it can be harnessed. cities produce a lot of criminals, but they also produce a lot of great artists. Indeed, why not both? And if anyone didn't already deduce this, cities are the worst possible places to live during a contagious pandemic, and indeed during a lockdown. I did live in London for 10 years, and I'm sparklingly relieved not to live there anymore. If I did, I would probably be panicking too. I'm fortunate now to be living in a small town in the middle of the English nowhere. Naturally, however, out here in the sticks, we nevertheless have to abide by the same strict lockdown rules as that lot in that London. In England and indeed the Greater British Isles, there's always been a vigilant distrust of them lot in that London down there. You Americans will understand it as what goes on at the coasts. Even so, it's easy for even small town folks to get the impression that city life is typical life, if even the small town folks are watching the same mass media, especially if they're not even seeing the public places for any comparison. If your whole world is online, for instance, your whole world is like one big city. If your whole world is in print, your whole world is a city in the Dark Ages. When in reality, the world is mostly open ocean. Not all frogs go ribbit. It's the Hollywood effect in long terms. The cerveza syndrome in contemporary terms. The point is, you can't get 7 billion people to do the same thing. You absolutely cannot. Unless you are a meteor and that thing is being killed by a meteor. Even a virus, quite evidently, doesn't necessarily do the same thing to everyone. Certainly no amount of human reasoning or policing can get 7 billion people to behave how you want them to behave. Blaming anything on the peon masses is like blaming a white whale. It is beyond the sum of its parts. It is a collection of cells that is highly intelligent but does not share your values at all. And you cannot make it share your values. You can't even get 7 million people to do the same thing, because you'll inevitably get maybe 70 people who, for whatever reason, will not adjust to the regulations. And they go on to commit violations of those regulations, and maybe 7 of those people commit those violations in full view of a camera. Given how many people have phone-ready video camera software in their pocket, this is a conservative estimate, to say the least. And even within these conservative estimates, we still end up with 7 people blasted across the media as examples of human beings who can't even follow simple commands, simple, scientifically uncontroversial commands, without buggering it up somehow. And so, anyone who graces said mass media can see today's 7 examples of why human beings are stupid and we need to control them. And this is why some people are losing their faith in humanity, because there remain some traceable scraps of evidence that not all 7 billion of us can be controlled under surveillance. This is apparently dismaying to quite a lot of people. This is considered a good reason to lose trust in humanity, like the whole thing. And that development in the threadbareness of threadbare reasoning is the reason the rest of us are losing faith in humanity. Because of the first thing. Clause 1. Not every living human can recordably follow the same set of rules, therefore humanity is a problem. Clause 2. People actually believe Clause 1 in their masses, therefore humanity is a problem. I've got to say, the wolf at my own door bears a much closer resemblance to Clause 2. It's not that I'm unconcerned by people licking supermarket produce, or gathering on a rooftop to drink with their mates, or gathering in front of a gym to do squat thrusts until they reopen, or even, daftest of all, if everyone stands out in public at the same time and claps. So everyone stands out at the front door in public at the same time and goes, "Go forth, hand microbes!" Scatter into the good night. Fly, my pretties. It's like everyone standing in their front yards and beating the dust out of their carpets at the same time. This will save the asthmatics. I am helping. Like, even that kind of reckless buffoonery still doesn't perturb me as much as the twisted authoritarian virtue signalling that leads to such hypocrisies. The people who snitch on you for not clapping your germs all over your neighbours. I am concerned by people who cannot respect the personal boundaries of others. I always have been concerned with it. That hasn't changed. I am concerned by people who won't ever wear a mask for any reason, but I am even more concerned by people who won't let you not wear a mask for any reason. No, good listener, you are not the extreme example of whatever side you've chosen. But if you've chosen your side, so be it. Do you happen to know what that side is called? Starts with A. It's in the title of this video. In this information age of ours, it's easy to get the impression that liberty has got out of hand. There are people out there so miseducated in the pursuit of what they call freedom that they will callously risk endangering those around them in their hubristic displays of what I suppose I would call woke hipstering from another angle. But as I said, it's easy to get that impression because of the media you watch, the media most of us are watching. It's in the process of showing you the very worst examples the information age can dredge up. The 7 people today who were filmed by the 7 million cameras today. But in reality, the vast majority, the vastest conceivable majority of people, we're all complying with the regulations as politely and collectedly as anyone can. It's just easy to ignore the people who are being compliant because they're not doing anything newsworthy, not doing anything that's going to get filmed and ends up on your media feed. But, or should I say, and conversely, we're also seeing a lot of footage of individuals acting in the opposite extreme, that of authoritarianism. I myself have indulged in a video scrapbook of absurdly authoritarian bunglings committed by the UK police. But as I clarified, it was satire, and as I will now clarify, those individuals are not the norm either. They are uncommon events selected for their newsworthiness. It's easy to get the impression that the entire police force is run by substitute teachers on their first day, if you could only consider one angle of the data. But I remain confident, as I believe you should too, that most police officers are not like that. They are just doing their jobs properly, and therefore they are not newsworthy, and therefore no one's filming them. Although, obviously, police officers should be held to a higher standard than just humans. There's no standard for being human other than being alive. The majority of people, maybe not even the vast majority of this time, I don't even know, but the majority of people are not insane authoritarians or insane libertarians. I'd like to make that as clear as I can now and for the rest of this lecture. But given what is in the news, I'm going to have to focus my attention on the kind of things in the news, so bear with me. Evidently this change, this sudden and inexplicable surprise bend in the road, is bringing out a lot of people's inner libertarian, and it's bringing out a lot of people's inner authoritarian. And one of these demons is sneakier than the other, for it is followed but never seen. It owns but is never owned. One day we might evolve or cybernetically develop into an organism or cybernetic organism that does not require group reciprocation in order to function normally. Like tigers or polar bears, or so. Maybe one day some humanoid descendants can survive by wandering the earth in solitude in the distant hope of eating or humping something. But until then, if we are to survive as a species in the bodged bags of DNA nature has given us, we're going to have to play the ball where it lies. And where it lies is, if we can't get along with other humans, we're all going to die. And the rats and cockroaches will do their smug victory dance over our smouldering corpses. Is that what you want? Fair enough, but this rant isn't for you. Enjoy your nihilism. I hope one day we can have a smoke together. Speaking of smoking, and speaking of identity politics, you'll see why this segue works in the long term. If you smoke one cigarette in your entire lifetime, are you a smoker? No, of course not. Few would disagree. If you smoke one cigarette every waking hour of your adult life, are you a smoker? Yes. Few would disagree there either. What about one cigarette a year? Or one cigarette a week? Is that a smoker? One a month? How frequently must a person smoke before they could be called a smoker? How frequently must one simp before one could be called a simp? How frequently must one advocate for... You get the idea. Any attempt to answer this question can only churn out a subjective answer, because the question is a question of could. Could this be called that? The objective answer is, of course, yes across the board. You could even rephrase it from could to should and still have the same problem. Who is to say when a verb becomes a noun? Nobody. And yet everybody does it. Everybody gets to be the arbiter whensoever they feel like it. A lot of people will profess the claim, I don't like labels. You don't have to listen to them for very long before you discover what they mean is, I don't like being labelled. But I am ready, willing, and perfectly happy to label everyone else with the dodgy slurs I'm using this season. That's a racist, that's a misogynist, that's a pick-me, that's a thought, that's an incel, that's a simp, that's a cuck, that's an MRA. But me, I'm not anything. See, I'm normal. I'm just a default human being. It's everyone else who needs to be tagged at my whim. Oh, but I don't believe in tags. That is how you win at identity politics. You have to catch everyone else before anyone else catches you. It's one great global game of freeze tag, yes. And it doesn't lend itself to winners. So, as a matter of fact, there could be only one. Or fewer. So how do you approach this fairly? If you get to label people, then surely you must accept that you too will be labelled. If you don't believe in labelling, then don't do it. On which side do you err in any given case? Is it all or nothing? Is it everyone or no one? After many years of hacking away at this problem, I've come pretty close to concluding that it is probably better to err on the side of just don't do it. Avoid resorting to those collective personal nouns wherever possible. To frame an idea or behaviour in terms of the people who do it, or the people to whom it applies, usually, almost always, I find, cheapens the issue. Cheapens the argument you're trying to have about the idea. Because invariably it is about the idea, and yet you're making it about some people. You've moved the onus of responsibility onto the vessels instead of the cargo, onto some vessels instead of the cargo. It's the pluralistic equivalent of an ad hominem fallacy. So it's probably for the best to refrain from doing that as much as possible. But for one thing, that's all it does. It cheapens it. Doesn't invalidate it. And some situations do indeed call for cheapness, brevity, economy of language. And it is extremely challenging to use modern English without stumbling into collective personal nouns, because it's a short and efficient way of indicating what you're talking about in terms less abstract than they could be. Although it is theoretically possible to do it. You start by saying ism instead of ists. See if you can refine it from there. Much like it's theoretically possible to use English without ever employing the terms I or me. Nothing in the world necessarily requires such a reference point. Even when describing one's condition to a doctor, one can refer to any part of the body or the mind without ever deferring to the elusive phenomenon of the conscious self. The conscious self has no physical presence, at least none ever objectively discovered. You could do it with you and we as well, using demonstrative pronouns. You say that instead of you and these instead of we. And it's an interesting exercise to see if you can talk and remove all personal pronouns from one's language. But it's very, very difficult. It's very counterintuitive, and it does sound a bit odd if one keeps doing it. And eventually, one ends up using one to mean exactly the same thing as I, so it's kind of pointless. But I think it might be not as pointless to be sparing with the collective personal pronouns. I don't think refraining from saying I will make people less self-centered or whatever, but I think we could perhaps benefit if every now and again we caught ourselves saying sinner when we mean sin. Or saying Muslims when we mean Islam. Or saying women when we mean childishness. Or men. Now, sometimes you'll be referring to the cause of something rather than the symptom you're addressing. That is certainly an efficient way to sort of cut corners. Unfortunately, they're still not the same thing. Symptoms are a given. Symptoms are determined inductively. They exist in the present. Causes, not so much. Causes are past events. They need to be. They require abductive reasoning. Remember, what should we do about this doctrine? What should we do about this idea? What should we do about this behavior? These are all completely different questions from what should we do about these people. They may be intrinsically connected and even inseparable in some cases, and you may have to go at it from one angle or another, but they are different questions. We do everyone a disservice when we answer the wrong one. And of course, this isn't foolproof either. It's perfectly possible to create a less personal noun that's just as abusable as any more collective one. I'm not talking about men. I'm talking about toxic masculinity. Yeah, no, that's still connecting to a kind of people, not just a kind of behavior. In any case, you have to try and do your best to refer to something that all parties involved mutually agree is a thing, and preferably is a thing. But as I was alluding earlier, almost nobody identifies as authoritarian. We're generally reluctant to admit to saying or believing anything that we would call authoritarian. It's considered an insult, almost universally, to call someone authoritarian. You know they exist all over the place, not just in the halls of power, but ordinary people in their millions in the streets and the suburbs and whatnot. There must be a significant degree of authoritarianism out there, otherwise the entire top half of the political spectrum is just for decoration. It's more like the whole thing is just for decoration. So, sure enough, though, most people, if and when they take a political spectrum test, land mysteriously somewhere in the bottom half, usually just left of centre, because they're not answering the questions honestly, and or the questions aren't being asked honestly. For instance, if you ask the question, should the right wing get to do X, you might get the answer no, yet ask the question, should the left wing get to do X, where X is fundamentally the same thing, you might well get the answer yes. Obviously, these aren't the kinds of questions you'll typically get in a political spectrum test, and that's the problem. People can be very dishonest, even with themselves. Until you get to the bottom of their dishonesty, you're not going to build an accurate portrayal of their beliefs. When someone reveals that they have one set of rules for the left and the opposite set of rules for the right, or vice versa, instinctively you'd think this only gives us information about the horizontal wing on which this person is aligned. It surely tells us nothing about their vertical placement, since they react with authority when it comes to the right wing, but with liberty when it comes to the left, or vice versa. Surely these things cancel each other out on the vertical axis. But here's the thing. No. Get for that. Free speech 101, folks. If you don't believe in free speech, for those you disagree with, you don't believe in free speech at all. If you restrict one demographic with authority but privilege another with liberty, you are not libertarian at all. On the contrary, if one of your rules is the rules only apply to half of the people, then you are the worst kind of authoritarian, the dishonest kind, the capricious kind, the moral busybodies who will inexorably spiral towards totalitarianism. So, nobody calls it authoritarian when they do it. We're sort of obliged to conjure up some other word for it, some euphemism or another. Some call it equality, some call it freedom, some call it rights. Some people just swap rights for another functionally synonymous term and then act like they're changing the game and starting a revolution. Any term that can be used to describe liberty can also be used as a foil against it. We're a tricky breed, us humans, able to play fast and loose with reality should we feel like it. Regarding that, on some sides I'm hearing responding to feminists is so 2016. That argument is over and we won. Gamergate won. The Trump people won. It's done. Go home, gentlemen. You have no troops to garrison. You have no wounds to lick. Begone and hug your children. You definitely have access to them now. And on some sides, I'm hearing the men's rights movement has achieved nothing. For all their efforts, this and that is still going on. The battle is still as uphill as ever. That argument is over and you lost. The Republicans won something, the Conservatives won something. Apparently Gamergate won something. I can't for the life of me figure out what. How's The Last of Us working out for you? Is that you winning? Is that the tiger blood working its magic? But no, everyone who fought the good fight against feminism and whatever gate through which is recently invaded your own personal hobby or industry, everyone has soundly trounced the gender Puritans and thoroughly scuppered the openly anti-men's rights feminists. Everyone has defeated them, except the men's rights movement. They need to be replaced by the men's good things movement, or the pro-men's stuff we want to put into effect movement. Like, before you make your society up, you might want to make your minds up. The enemies of men, right? Are they winning or not? Is that a childishly oversimplified question or not? By any chance are you getting the left or the right confused with something else? Willy-nilly, as and when you feel like flipping it. And of course, the plot has become considerably thicker in the past couple of months, hasn't it? The world is experiencing a phenomenon that is way beyond the scope of the left or the right, or any of the circular tribal squabbling with which they waste everyone's time. The left and the right don't know what to think. Their playbooks have no chapters on this. In fact, it kind of seemed like at first the right was preaching doom and the left was saying it's not that bad. And then, I swear, like a week later, they'd swapped over. Since then, the left has been preaching doom and the right has been saying it's not that bad. Oh, that's right, we're supposed to be about the economy and we're supposed to be about society. Doy. And yet neither side will ever concede that the other side was correct the first time. They're not even interested. They just swapped positions and carried on like nothing happened. You're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're a racist. No, you're a degenerate. No, oh, crap. We don't know what's going on. Help. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. No, you're a degenerate. No, you're a racist. In light of what I've just told you, it should be easy to explain what's going on here. This isn't an argument between the entire left and the entire right. It's an argument between two specific groups, the authoritarian left and the authoritarian right. You're hearing there is a huge suffocating glut of tribalist thugs who will stop at nothing, who will scorch the earth of every liberty you have if it means the other tribe is defeated. They are so far up the top of the political spectrum that it is frankly irrelevant which horizontal side they're on. And you're one step closer to recognizing them, friends. Postulation. If I criticize a hospital, or if I question the findings of its virology labs, and your response to me is, where are your political credentials? Are you a mayor? Which city do you govern? When I was clearly talking about a medical issue, then you are not just an authoritarian, you are a nutjob authoritarian. You're not listening, you're not even thinking, you're just reading a script that has nothing to do with anything. Fortunately, no one's dumb enough to say it that way around, but guess what? If I criticize the government or question its handling of the lockdown, and your response is, where are your medical credentials? Yeah, see above, you're a nutter. And I won't tell you to stop it, I won't tell you to shut up or grow up or think about your life. I'm just not going to listen to you. Nor does anyone else have to. When the police are recorded all over the country, actually hounding people into their homes, actually treating innocent citizens as though they're prisoners who aren't allowed outside for more than an hour, even if it's not the case, if someone points out that this is happening and you go, what do you mean prisoners? This is nothing. I get to go outside once a day. I get to go collect my food once a day. How is that anything like being a prisoner? Schmurp. It's just quarantine. Don't you see? It's just a special kind of quarantine where we quarantine people who are not sick. I don't know what the word is for that, but it's definitely not prison. It's definitely not incarceration of any kind. It's definitely not house arrest or any of this silly business. We're supposed to be calling it quarantine. La la la, we're saving lives, we're saving lives. I am so not the one who's gone biblically insane. Yeah, an AIDS pig of any flavour is an authoritarian. That ability to call something by a different name and pretend it's a different thing. People don't do that for giggles. People do it so they can make up the rules on the fly, so that every road leads to do what I want. That makes you a thoroughbred authoritarian. A barely veiled, iron-fisted piece of smeg. An inflamed boil of blind tyranny that couldn't wait to erupt from the bubonic armpit of humanity and swamp everyone in pus. You will do anything, say anything, and believe anything that Big Brother tells you, because it means you get to boss people around with an unquestionable truth. You are superglued to the ceiling of the political spectrum. You're ominously hanging from it like a scabby bat. Gee, I really hope your pestilent corpse doesn't get cooked in a soup and you kill 1 million people. If you do absolutely sod all to save anyone's life, and yet you claim you're saving lives, yeah, if you sit in your chair barking orders at strangers and you call it saving lives, you are the end game of authoritarianism. You are the final form of cynical, self-serving virtue signaling. Because at that point, you can justify anything. When your brain can turn any minor political disagreement into a literal life or death situation, the sky is the limit for you. You can do anything with your conscience intact. And when it's not even enough to say we're saving lives, and it becomes you're killing people, or you want people to die, then you've broken through the ceiling and the sky of the political spectrum, and you are now in low Earth orbit, pointing your junk at the human race like a death ray. You're accusing people of murder for not going to their room when you tell them to. And even you probably think you're not being authoritarian. Even you still believe you're a paragon of freedom and order and sanity. But to everyone around you who isn't wearing the same brand of steel jackboot as you, it is starkly obvious who you are. A robotic sentinel of despotism. An idiot useful to no one but the Grim Reaper, as he parties like it's 1999. This is why and I'm not even exaggerating here, this nonsense is why wars are fought. This is the reason we can supply any given army on any given day. Masses of human beings will not kill other masses of human beings unless they believe that those other humans are going to kill them first. This can become true and remain true for generations of mindless revenge until, much like the slow misanthropic creep of city life, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it always traces back to a falsehood. 1,000 years of bloody conflict can be started by one generation, one group, or even one individual erroneously telling you that those people are going to kill you when those people are not going to kill you. So you kill some of them, and then they kill some of you, and the prophecy is self-fulfilled. Well done. And I hope at this point you can see why the rats and the cockroaches are already drinking to our demise. Now, even despite everything I said earlier about labels, I would recommend that anyone who finds themselves indulging in authoritarian positions would be doing everyone a favour if they owned it. If you call yourself anything, call yourself authoritarian. Because it's very clear at this point that the petty disputes between the left wing and the right wing are nothing but a distraction at this point. Stay at home is an authoritarian position. Okay? It is the authoritarian position in this case. Now, I don't know if that makes you an authoritarian just because you took the authoritarian position in one instance, but if you make a habit of it, there is only so habitual you can get before that label appears on your sleeve, whether you like it or not. If you were saying stay at home back in March, that's one thing, but if you're still saying stay at home come June, there won't be many people left to fool. If you were going, listen to experts, the experts are telling us to stay at home, and then when the experts say you don't need to stay at home, you go, no, the experts are wrong, then I don't want to catch you talking smack about the left or right ever again, or about SJWs or anti-SJWs, or about incels or simps or any of this nonsense, because all you're doing is playing everybody with your kabuki puppet show, so they don't notice the real problem. Your authoritarianism. The avenue of authoritarianism with which you are comfortable. And if someone calls you an authoritarian, do go ahead and cry me a river of no, I'm not. Maybe think about what's going on next time you call someone one of the splayed arsenal of slurs that you like to use. Because I guarantee you, none of those are ever as apposite as authoritarian is for you. And you may very well have good reasons to take the authoritarian position. I think violent offenders should be punished by the state. I think murderers should be punished by the state. There you go. That is an authoritarian position. To me, that is the point of which authority makes more sense than liberty. But that only includes murderers. Yet not people who might be risking an accidental infection according to you and the experts you prefer. And you can say, look, it's a pandemic. Of course we need more authority than we usually do. It's an emergency. That's fine. That's a perfectly reasonable and maybe even compassionate perspective. But it is the authoritarian perspective. I'm not even going to ask about your medical credentials. I'm not even going to ask how you're so sure about the nature and the potential of a virus that came into existence last year. I mean, I'm not a real doctor. And you're probably very clever. But you must understand you are still being authoritarian there. You can think of a good reason for it. Well done. You did it. But if it turns out you've done no more reasoning than the average chumps with whom you disagree, then essentially you're landing on the authoritarian position because you want to. You are believing what you want to believe. And you've just finally found an excuse to almost admit it. So do be a darling, do be a champion of champions, and try to get beyond the almost there. Just admit it. Don't give me this, I'm not being authoritarian, I'm just being logical. You could be both. My dude, did you know you can be both? You can be authoritarian and logical, or you can be authoritarian and illogical. I am casting no judgment on your logic, but you are being authoritarian. Okay? If you're that sure of yourself, just admit it. And if you won't admit it, it's because you're just not that sure. You're just not that confident that what you've got actually holds up to the light of day and the greatest disinfectant that is sunlight. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Hey everyone, this guy thinks bleach is the best disinfectant. Ha ha! He doesn't know the difference like I do. I'm smart. Have you been using this crisis as an excuse to keep flailing at the same Emmanuel Goldstein as ever before? Has this only further emboldened you to carry on bullying those you consider unbullyable? Well, I guess that's fine too, but just because you've found a target that you consider unbullyable, it does not mean you're not a bully for bullying them. Trolls troll trolls who troll trolls. This is bullies bully bullies who bully bullies. Buffalo, 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 buffalo. For good measure. You are engaging in bullying, okay? And what's another word for bullying? It's a slightly posher word for bully. That means someone who bullies and believes bullying to be the right thing to do. Even if they don't call themselves a bully. Well, bullying's what children do. Harassing is what adults do. Helicopter parenting is what parents do. Authoritarianism is what all of the above are called. Yeah? Own it. Let's make this fight about what it has always been about. Forget the left, forget the right. This is between authority and liberty. If everyone could remove the magical cloaks of I'm a socialist, or I'm a conservative, or I'm a progressive, or I'm a traditionalist, pipe down, okay? None of that is important anymore. You might as well call yourself a Pisces and have done with it at this point. It does not matter. Let's play this ball where it really lies. Let's fight this fight where it really is. And then it might actually be a fair fight. Now, does saying any of this make me authoritarian? Excellent question. Would you care to discuss it? Well, don't bother doing it in the comment section. Your comment will probably get eaten by the algorithm. And don't bother liking or subscribing. That too will be eaten. Perhaps it's a story for another day to what degree authoritarianism might be to blame for any of this. But never mind. Toodaloo, yous. Sorry this took so long. I had a lot of non-satire to get off my chest in one big hairball of verbal diarrhea. Thank you for sticking it out with me. I'll try to get back to the funny-ish stuff soonish. Bye! Don't let the beer bugs bite. Word. I think I managed to not swear for 40 minutes. That's pretty good.